and we're moving into our second conversation for today. We are focusing on the situation of refugees across the world, and of course here in Belize, as June 20th, World Refugee Day will be celebrated. We have with us via Zoom, of course, Janelle Mackenzie, who is the Senior Public Information Assistant for UNHCR. We have Herbert Flores, who is a teacher at Monsignor Romero RC School. We have Dr. Nuan Bonilla, who is from the Western Regional Hospital. And we have a student from the Cayo Center for Employment Training. And she is using today, of course, she doesn't want to disclose her identity, so we will be calling her Brenda. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you all for joining us. And Janelle, let's start off with a backdrop of what the UNHCR does in Belize and what the situation of refugees, what it's like in Belize.
Okay, as you mentioned, June 20th is recognized as World Refugee Day, and we have in excess of 70 million people displaced worldwide. And a refugee is a person who has been forced to flee his or her home because of violence, persecution, or war. Mm-hmm. So Belize has over 3,000 refugees, mostly from El Salvador and Honduras. Mm-hmm. Now, in 2016, UNHCR, we established an office here in Belize, and our goal is to protect the rights of refugees here in Belize, as well as to work with the government to put in place policies that will benefit refugees.
Yeah. So, you know, we have three brave persons joining us to tell us about their stories, and I think this is a critical part of the conversation because very often we assume what the motives are about why people come to Belize. And when we hear the stories, we realize that it's not quite what we think. Let's start with you, Dr. Bonilla. At what age did you come to Belize, and what led you and your family to coming here?
Hi, good morning to everybody.
Yes.
Well, actually, in my case, it was my parents who were the refugees initially.
Yeah.
They came here to Belize in 1982. They were Salvadoran. Original, well, they are from El Salvador, and they came here fleeing the civil war that was occurring during those years at their home country. When they first arrived here, they were placed in a refugee village in the Valley of Peace area, from where they have been living all these past years. In my case, I was born here in Belize, so it's like I'm a first generation of Belizeans born to refugee persons.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you grew up, as you grew up in Valley of Peace, I'd imagine, knowing the stories and the background of people and what they left behind, what is your recollection of how people felt about being able to have this safe space in Belize?
Well, definitely to hear their stories is something very heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. If you pay mind to it, they had to leave their families back, a whole life they left behind. So having a place like Belize, a country like Belize, opening the doors for them is something very good to hear about, because it means a new opportunity for them, a new place to develop their potentials and contribute to that country as well. If you pay mind to it, it's like back and forth. You give me something and I give you something back. And that's the whole story of my family and many other families in our village, most of them that were refugees from the Civil War. Many of them now have their own businesses. Most of my classmates, they have their own careers. They have good job positions now, and now they are serving back the community, not only for the same Salvadorans, but to the whole country. So it's just a matter of having an opportunity, getting an opportunity, and knowing to take advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
were you, sorry, and you know, as you were growing up, were you sort of aware of your family situation and also the others in your community?
Yes, definitely. We always hear stories about what was the civil war in El Salvador, and definitely it's not something quite nice to hear about. So I think we were fortunate to grow in a more safe environment than our other relatives, because we still have families in El Salvador, and they had to live the whole civil war.
Yeah. You said that your experience growing up with parents who are refugees has actually prompted you to pursue the career that you're in. You graduated last year from med school. You are working in the public healthcare system at Western Regional Hospital. Build that connection for us. Tell me why their experience made you feel that you wanted to serve the country in the medical profession.
Yeah, well, definitely when you grow in an environment like this, as such as a refugee environment, you know there's a lot of poverty undergoing there. So you see the need that people have. And in our case, Valley of Peace, we never did have like a physician there that would be stationed there. We always had some brigades that would come to our village. So you see the necessity, the need of doctors there. So to some extent, that open your eyes. It makes you realize that there's a need there. And well, I think everybody has that idea of somehow changing that reality for other people to have a more safe environment. So that was one of the main reasons why I decided to enter medical school, because I wanted to change that reality. I want to be someone to help my community, and not only my community, but other communities around our village. And well, that's what I'm doing now. Right now, I'm stationed at the Western Regional Hospital as an internist, and from here, basically we cover the whole Western region, the Western Health region.
Just one final question, because we know that you have to go because you have another appointment. But you know, you were born in Belize, but you knew the situation of your parents and the other people in the village. When you hear the conversation that takes place in the wider community and the perceptions that people have of refugees, what's the thing that you think that people misunderstand the most?
Yeah. Well, I think when it comes to refugees, and not only in Belize, you can hear that from other places in the world. In many cases, there's a misconception that refugees just represent a burden to any country. And to some extent, I think at the beginning it is like that. But then eventually, whatever investment a country is making on these people, eventually they will start to see a feedback from them. In many cases, it's talented people, even persons with a tertiary level education might find themselves on this situation as refugees, and these are talented people that can somehow return whatever aid they receive from any government back to the communities in which they are settled. So I think that misconception of seeing refugees as a burden, it has to change definitely. It has to change because the country can benefit a lot from these people. And particularly in our cases, Valley of Peace has been a farming community, and they provide, most of these people, they were refugees from the civil war in El Salvador, and refugees now from other of the Central American countries. And basically they provide the whole Western region with fruits and vegetables, not only Cayo, but also Belize, the Belize district. And well, now it's not only farmers. In my case, I'm a doctor. We have nurses, we have teachers, many people working in the tourism industry now. So if you notice, the country is benefiting now from whatever investment they did on those early years.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Dr. Bonilla. We really appreciate it.
Welcome.
And speaking of other areas where there has been involvement or contributions by people who are refugees, we have teacher Herbert Flores. And Herbert, your story starts when you were 4 years old. Tell us about what happened.
Well, actually, I was born in El Salvador during a time in which the civil war was rampant in that country. And the families were being killed simply because they were at the wrong place at the wrong time, or because they lived in a zone that was considered friendly to one or the other groups in conflict. My family decided to migrate, taking a risk, and that is how in 1981 we arrived in Belize and settled in the northern district of Rosal, specifically in a village called Shaibe. While there, we were contacted by representatives from UNHCR who told us about the Valley of Peace project, and that is how we ended up in Valley of Peace. I studied here in Valley of Peace because when we came, we were assisted with housing facilities, we were assisted, land was made available for farming, there was a health center, there was a school for children to go to, and that is basically what happened in my case.
Do you have any memories of sort of leaving and actually when you arrived in Belize? Do you have or perhaps any prior memories of El Salvador?
Yes, I do actually, because you see, we lost loved ones in the war, and we had no choice but to be moving from place to place simply for survival purposes. So even in El Salvador, we had to be moving from place to place before we left for Belize. And indeed, when we entered Belize, you could feel that aura of calmness, of tranquility. As the national anthem says, Belize is a tranquil haven of democracy, and we experienced that firsthand. And for that, indeed, I'm really, really grateful.
Yeah. You know, as an educator now and working at the very same school that you attended, you get to share the unique perspective that you do have. All these years later, do you feel that there is a better understanding of the relationship between Belize and Central American countries and the opportunity that refugees have had?
Indeed, because as Dr. Bonilla, sometimes refugees are seen as people who are a burden to the country, or perhaps being criminal themselves. But in fact, the fact is that refugees are forced to leave their homes. So it's not that they wake up one day and decide to come, and leaving everything behind. So when the refugees come, they bring a lot of knowledge, a lot of skills that they put to use. And slowly, gradually, the native people, or the residents of Belize, were able to see that the people who had come because of the Civil War were indeed people who were law-abiding and hard-working. We continue to live up to that expectation because, again, as Dr. Bonilla mentioned, Valley of Peace is an agricultural community. Yeah. It's a breadbasket not only for the Cayo district, but for the entire country, I would say. And yet, we have professionals serving in all capacities throughout the country of Belize. So that perception has indeed changed a lot.
Yeah. So let's hear from Brenda right now. Brenda, you recently moved, and I think that is an interesting situation because it's not talking about civil war anymore, but what people don't realize is the high level of violence that still exists in some Central American countries today. So Brenda, share your story with us.
Good morning.
Morning.
I came to Belize for the violence that we have in El Salvador. Um, in the 2016, I came to Belize. I was starting in El Salvador, but my dad almost died for the gun that we have in El Salvador. And I was scared in El Salvador, and we have to came here to Belize.
Yeah.
And do you remember when you came to Belize, was there anything in particular that you were looking for or hoping to find when you left?
Well, when we came to Belize, I just was thinking about improve, and living a safe life and help to my parents and also help to develop the country, and yeah.
And do you remember what it felt like when you finally came? Did you feel like immediately that it was like safer? Did you feel more at peace?
Yeah.
Stephanie, help us understand how bad things were in El Salvador. You were a teenager, so you grew up there, you were in school, you had friends, and then what happened for your family to suddenly leave that life behind and come here and start over?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
What happened?
Well, I was studying, and one day my mom just say we need to leave from here, and my dad came before me here to Belize, and I don't finish my story in El Salvador, and I was really sad because I leave my another family, my friends, and the first day was really hard for me because this was a new country for me, a new culture, but I really feel safe here now.
And in addition to feeling safe in that you've escaped the violence, do you feel also that like Belize is like you've really made a home here?
Yes.
And right now you're studying. Your English is really good. You went to school and you want to work in the tourism industry.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us about learning English and what the experience has been like in the school system.
Well, when I came to Belize, I really don't understand nothing in English, and I went to English class, and I'm learning English because English sometimes is really difficult for me, but I try my best.
All right. Well, definitely speaking very clear there. Let's take it back to Janelle. Janelle, these are three very different stories, and just a very small snapshot of what the situation is for people who flee their countries and come to Belize. As we talk about the era of the civil war for El Salvador, I think people are more acquainted with that reality. But what's happening today in Central America that makes Belize seem like the ideal place to be safe?
Okay, the present situation in Central America is that there are gangs. So what happened is that these gangs force young people, young men and boys, to join the gang, and they recruit them to sell drugs, to collect extortion money, and while the young females are forced to have sexual relationship with these gang members. Now, if these young people refuse, they could be killed. So that's the reality that our young people face in Central America. And I've spoken with mothers who have come to Belize and said that they left because their children were in danger from gangs, and they wanted a safe place for them to live and have a bright future. So that's the reality of the situation in places like El Salvador and Honduras.
And for the Belizean situation, which maybe you could describe a little bit of what is occurring here, because people are fleeing El Salvador, Honduras, as you said, and then they come. So perhaps you can give us an idea of maybe some numbers and also sort of the ways in which they establish themselves as communities.
Well, the second wave is about over 3,000 registered at least, we know of. It could be more than that. And these people settle in places like Valley of Peace, Las Flores, Salvapan, Mayamopan. However, they are limited because under the law, they are not able to work until they receive their refugee status. So while their application is being processed, they are unable to work, which is hard for them.
This is actually one of the critical points here. So there are two things. People do come across illegally, and some do come through the border points, right?
Yes.
Okay. And if a person enters illegally, they have a specific time frame to go in and apply for refugee status.
Yes, they have a 14 days time frame to visit the refugees department and apply for refugee status.
And I mean, we know some people have missed that window, which puts them in a difficult predicament. They came as wanting to be refugees, but they didn't follow the process. But when that application form goes in, how much time is it between applying and either whether they're approved or not approved? When do you get the final response?
I'm not sure exactly. I believe the refugees department would have more information on that, but I know that the window is 14 days.
Yeah. So it takes a while, I think sometimes because during that time where you're applying, they can't work. They can't go to school. They can't, what are they allowed to do during that time?
The children can go to school. The children can attend primary school.
Primary school. Mm-hmm.
Yes, but for the children, for those who want to go farther, they're not even allowed to have practice works. And the children, they will need a social security card to attend high school.
And so, in the celebration of World Refugee Day, where you know that there are people who completely understand what's happening in Central America and are a bit more understanding to the situation, and then there are Belizeans who simply see people coming into the country as seeking economic opportunity and perhaps lessening opportunities for other Belizeans. How do you help to educate the wider population to understand the plight of people like the refugees we have in Belize?
Okay, that's why these conversations are very important, because the reality is that they are fleeing violence and persecution in their countries, and they just want a safe place to live their lives. And as like Dr. Manel and Mr. Flores, they want to contribute back to the community. And so many others like them want to do the same. So it's not a matter of just taking from the public purse, but they want to give back and help build the communities that are now their homes.
Yeah.
And I was, can you also perhaps shed a little bit of light on sort of when, assuming that somebody does come to Belize and they do, let's say, follow the process and their application is, let's say, granted, can you maybe describe a little bit of what happens after? We know that Herbert gave his account of his story that when his family did come here, they were able to access some land, they were able, to do farming. So are there still programs like that are going on?
Well, our partners have programs for refugees. we have like Help for Progress, we have Humana, and they could learn skills. Like for example, Humana has a sewing class going on where refugees women attend and they learn to sew. So there are some programs that are provided for these refugees to help them to learn a skill.
Okay, that's good. Perhaps maybe Brenda, you can, since you came here relatively recently in comparison to our other guests, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your story about when you, right after you came to Belize, what did you, was it easy, you know, with your family to find a house, to get back into school? Like, what was it like for you?
When I came, I passed 2 years that I don't study, and was really difficult. But now I am improve myself. I am study, and I really like to stay here in Belize because I am studying. My family now we are living a safe life, and I am really thankful with the government of Belize to give me an opportunity to study here in Belize, and I am improving it.
Yeah. All right. And so on World Refugee Day, Janelle, you are having a competition. Tell us about that. Why this is a part of the celebration?
Well, actually, it's not a competition. It's a cooking show where...
Oh, it's a cooking show.
Yes, it is. So we have a refugee cooking a local food from her country. So, and that's what we have. These refugees, they also bring their local food here to Belize, and we get to enjoy them and experience a bit about their culture back home in their countries of origin. And so we will be having that in collaboration with the Department of Youth Services. We're teaming up with them. So on June 19th, on their Facebook page, the show will be on their Facebook page. So you could tune in at 10 a.m. in the morning to see the show.
Okay. Do we have any preview as to what we'll see them cooking?
Well, actually, it's pupusa.
Ooh, that's what I was hoping for.
Yes, like I said, we enjoy that in Belize.
Yeah.
So that's what she will be cooking.
Well, we really appreciate all of you joining us this morning. Of course, Brenda, Dr. Bonilla, and Herbert sharing your individual stories. We know that it takes a lot sometimes to kind of share these stories, so we acknowledge your braveness and we thank you for participating. And Janelle, of course, for letting us know just what's happening in our country and how you guys will be celebrating as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you too.
Thank you too.
All right, do take care. So with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break, and we're shifting gears, and maybe we do a bit of a open your eyes PE session here today. What do you think?
We'll see. Let's see if we can.
All right, so we're going to be talking about virtual PE after the break. Stay tuned.